should start at 11:05.
Bingo. Okay. Yes, it's recording. So, hello everybody out there in around the well. This time it's in France. People are mostly in France today. This is Monty Silver. I'm a U.S. tax lawyer and board member at ARO, the Association of Americans Resident Overseas. It's one of the two nonpartisan organizations which promote the interests of Americans abroad. I'm in charge of the tax committee and tax advocacy. Many of you have heard my name. So today we are going to have a webinar on French tax, not US tax. There's a deadline coming up very shortly, and so we've asked Isaac, who will shortly briefly discuss himself, and then he'll delve into it, to talk about various things about predominantly individual tax issues and banking issues maybe for Americans living in France or French people in general. And so we're very thankful to have Isaac join us. This session is being recorded and will be uploaded to the website of ARO and will be available for free to ARO members. And yeah, that's it. I will now hand over the floor to Isaac to introduce himself. And again, I know it's really crunch time, and I very much appreciate Isaac for doing it kind of, he said yes a week ago, not knowing what he was going to get into, just knowing he had a pretty serious time constraint, giving tax deadlines. And with that, I'll hand it over to Isaac to take it from here. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Monte. Thank you for the sweet introductions. I'm a French American Canadian living in Paris, and have had my studies in France and in the US, or I should say US and France. Graduated from Yeshiva University in New York, and back in France for a couple years already. And we have this practice Monzo CPA that I will talk later on. But for now, my dear friend Monte asked me to share some knowledge, the ABC of the French taxation system, so at least people can be fully aware of the basic stuff and the basic steps how to move forward in order to be fully compliant, because I think everybody wants to be compliant. So at this time, I'm going to share my screen. I believe in Monte, you'll tell me if there are any problems and you don't see my screen.
Fine.
And I see some questions have arrived. I have already addressed, written down some of them. I will try to address all of the questions maybe towards the end, because I see the majority of the questions will be answered automatically through my presentation. So just bear with me for 20 minutes, 25 minutes top, and I'm sure you will discover a lot of new things and hopefully interesting items. So the menu for today, if I may say, let me see if I can do this way, maybe. Okay, so the menu for today is going to be, we're going to be talking individual French tax requirements, the filing and deadlines, obviously the hot topic of the moment, the tax authorities website and how to get in touch with your local offices, the general information on what type of revenues and information to declare. We'll obviously talk about our firm and obviously the next steps before we go to the Q&A. So the first thing we want to cover is a little bit of history.
One sec, I just want to say one thing. This is high level, or this is we're giving you general, or Isaac is giving you general ideas about the tax and accounting and CPA material. Nothing herein should be relied on, and you are free to contact Isaac afterward if you need more specific individual advice. But this is not legal or professional advice. And of course, ARO is not responsible for any of the content they're providing. This is a valuable service. Go ahead.
Thank you for reminding this important information, Monte. So the first thing we want to cover, and as I mentioned, this presentation is going to be limited in time, so I won't be able to cover everything. You can contact me later on, but I try to be very general and at the same time give you what you need to know and the most important items. So some history about how French system works since already more than 100 years. And as you can read in my page, you can see that the French tax system is progressive. So depending how much taxable income you make, you will have a tax rate. You also need to know that more than half of the population in France, whether they're French citizens or not, are not subject to any taxation. So that means they are either below the first bracket, and don't forget, as you may see here, that the bracket is increased depending on your quotient cap, meaning how many members of your household. So that's why the majority, well, I would say more than 50% in France are not subject to tax. So because of this progressive barème, as we call it. And that obviously allows that to say that if you make more money, then you pay tax. If you make a little bit money, you don't necessarily pay tax. Income tax in France is on a declarative basis. It's very important not to get confused between what we need to declare and what we need to pay. Often people will tell me, well, do I need to declare? Will I pay taxes on this, on that? Well, there are two different items. One, you must declare. Second, potentially based on the scheme you are in and the situation you are in, you will face taxation. We'll come back to this later on, but just for you to understand, declaration and paying taxes are two obvious different things. Foreign bank accounts must be included, and everybody knows that. We'll talk about it later on. And non-French income, again, for those are American citizens or having income abroad from France, not from France, will have to disclose that, and we'll see which ones are subject to tax or not. That's the overall French system. How does the French system works? With DGFIP, I'm sure everybody has heard about this term, which is the equivalent of the IRS. It stands for Direction Générale des Finances Publiques. And I'm sure everybody has heard about the word IRPP, which is RRPP, meaning the French tax return. The second two items that I want to discuss with you as a basics is something new for French citizens or French people since January 1st that is already used in the US for many years, is the automatic withholdings. Wasn't the case before 2019, but it has been enacted in 2019. So for you guys, it doesn't make any difference because you've been used in the US to be withheld from you bi-weekly or bi-monthly paychecks, the appropriate installment, tax installments taken from the tax authorities. And then at the end of the year, you basically catch up of either you haven't paid enough taxes during the year or you're getting a refund if you have paid in excess during the year. Well, this is something new for the French system. It's been enacted in 2019. So a lot of people didn't know about it. And they recently find out about it because it's a new system. And now it's working fine. But it also means that 2019 and 2020, like now, are transition years. What do I mean by transition years? If you made money in 2018, you had to declare in 2019 your tax return and pay taxes on it. Government decided to basically call an année blanche, free tax year, where you don't pay taxes for the 2018 related year. But in 2019, everybody has contributed to the new system using the pass, the withholding. If we had already left this old system in 2019 to pay the 2018 tax return, taxpayers would have ended up paying in 2019 the 2018 tax year, plus accruing for the new system in 2019 using the pass, which is the prélèvement à la source tax. So that is why in 2019 it was a transition year, and everybody has either underpaid or overpaid using this new system. And it's important to understand it, and it's, I think, very well explained there. And the pass rate is every year being updated based on your tax return being submitted. So make more money, the tax rate will get increased year after year. Now, the last thing I want to cover here in the first part is extremely important, the tax residency rules. A lot of people are confused about, do I have to submit a tax return? Am I a resident of France or not? First of all, you can be a tax resident of multiple countries at once. US citizens will always be forever and ever US tax resident because you have this worldwide income component that makes you in fact, that obligates you to file a US tax return. However, if you don't reside physically in a state, you don't have to submit a state return if you haven't spent more than 183 days. That's the general rule of local state. You still have to submit a federal tax return. French system is not like that. If you don't reside in France, you don't have to submit a French tax return, even if you have a carte de séjour or even if you have a French citizenship. Obviously, if you have a carte de séjour, that means you reside here, but you may have people, exceptions that have carte de séjour and live abroad. For example, citizens married to French citizens people. But three important items to really keep in mind here. The principal place of abode is how you determine your residency. And if you are coming from the States to the France on December 31st and you establish your permanent home, France, then you have to submit a French tax return, even if you have spent less than 183 days being present in France. That's very important. We'll talk about later a possibility to submit a no French tax return. You can still submit a no French tax return. It's actually good, but that's one element. Or, and obviously it's not and, it's or each of the items here. You consider your main professional activity based in France, even though you can travel abroad, and sometimes a lot of commuters between France and the US exist, but the majority of your time or your main activity is in France, makes you a French tax resident. Last item, if your family, if your investments, if your business is in France and you travel a lot, then you are a tax resident of France because your main economical interests are based in France. And as it says there, one spouse can be a resident of France and the other can be not a non-resident. That's very important to know about it. A lot of cases like that. Moving on about the next important items in filing and deadlines. So first of all, if you are a resident of France, you have an obligation to file on income generated in France and income generated abroad. And even if you don't have an income, you have to submit a no tax return. This is weird, but that's the way the French system is. Besides, for a lot of newcomers in France, you will always be asked, what is your avis d'imposition, French tax return? Well, if you don't have one because you said, well, I don't have to submit one, then you won't be able to have this paper. Well, if you submit a null tax return, it doesn't cost anything. It won't get you into trouble. At least you will be in the system and you can produce that document for renting an apartment, for a new job, for anything. And that is considered a justificatif de domicile, a proof of residence. If you are a non-resident of France, meaning you don't meet the criteria of France, you don't have to file a return in France unless you have income in France. For example, a lot of people live abroad and have a French secondary residence or an Airbnb or a house that they rent out, and they're generating income for that house. They must be declaring a non-resident French tax return. Where to file? So you have three possibilities. Either you paper file, which is not accepted any longer unless you have very exceptional cases, you don't have internet. Well, we are in 2020. I think everybody has internet now. Or you are the first time declarer, what we call that primo déclarant, then you're allowed to submit a paper file. If not, you have to go to impot.gov website, as it says there, and must have access, and we'll talk about it. And you file online and you get the immediate submission proof. EDI is electronic filing offered for professionals like us. We have kind of superpower because we get a confirmation from the tax authorities that it has been accepted and reviewed immediately. And we also get more time for submission. And obviously, as it says there, it might be the best solution. Key deadlines to remember. So France system, depending on, and I don't know why, I couldn't find the reason why. I guess departments in the sun have less time because maybe they enjoy more time at the beach, maybe, and they want to take care of their taxes so they can go have fun. But in general, as you can see here, departments located between 1 and 19 have until those deadlines. It is pretty simple. Paper, everybody is June 12th. Impo.gov is the official website, June 4th, 8th, and 11th. So if you are between department 1 and 19, you better hurry up and contact me today. And if you are an EDI through us, we have until June 12th. And if you are non-resident, you have until June 4th, again today. Just a little update on COVID. They did extend those deadlines, which were initially in May to June. So it's exceptional this year. But they've also offered an additional extension for those that have business income or rental property income. Those can be submitted until June 30th. So even if it's your personal return, but you have in there business income, which is rental property or business income, you can submit June 30th. How to contact you tax authorities? Obviously, you can do an online. Yep. Sorry.
So I understand. So what you're saying in the deadlines is if the person doesn't have rental income or business income, then they have the latest June 12th if they file it either paper or through a tax professional. But
yes.
But if they have a rental property or business income, then it's June 30th, regardless of how they file, whether it's paper,
correct,
online, or EDI.
Correct. Correct. And I'll tell you, Monte, the logic behind it is the government has extended. I don't know if there's a logic, but there is a logic according to the tax authorities. The logic is they have extended for companies submission of tax return June 30th. So they consider that even a personal return that has business income should take advantage of that business deadline, a new extended deadline, because most of the time this business income is generated through an accountant or through the need of a bookkeeper that is still crunching the numbers due to COVID. So they say if you have that type of income, we understand that the information is not ready, so we're pushing it off to June 30th to align you guys like any of the corporation tax return. So moving along, just to making sure we're on time, how to contact the tax authorities. A lot of people are confused on these forms, and I need you to be very clear on this. First of all, you must get a numéro fiscal, an NF, which is the equivalent of a tax ID number. In the US, it's easy. We all have a social security number, and that's how we get identified. For non-US citizens, you get the ITIN, which is also an equivalent of the identification tax number. And in France, you have to have a numéro fiscal. Can be done twofold. A lot of people use option B, which is paper request. You fill out Form 2043, you call them, you email them, and obviously most of the time the tax authorities will tell you we don't have time. Just submit the return like that, and once you submit the return, this will automatically generate a numéro fiscal. Yes, it's true, but it takes longer and it might be riskier because if they lose your return, especially if you're sending in paper, you don't have a way to be tracked because there is no numéro fiscal. The best option, and it's not very well known, it's option A, and I've provided the website there. You can click the online request, no paper to be sent via mail, and you provide the identity document, which is the same type of document you will have in option D, paper request, and you get usually, in 90% of the time, in 48 hours, your numéro fiscal. It doesn't allow you to still submit online if you are primo déclarant, first-time declarer, but at least in the return you'll be submitting, you have an identity there, so you can easily be tracked. And if you need to talk to the tax authorities, you can provide that numéro fiscal, and they'll know what they're talking about. Once you have that numéro fiscal, you need to go to the website and create an account, and that account will allow you basically contact them, follow your tax return submissions, your tax foncière and tax d'habitation, which are property taxes and so on. I see few questions, so I'll see if I can stop at the next stopping point to respond them. So just hold your horses there. And that's the best way to have access to them, because second point is contact the local authorities. A lot of people don't know, but there is a possibility, and you can see here in the picture, to contact the tax authorities by sending them a secure email within the info.gov portal, and they will respond to you within 5 to 10 business days, sometimes faster, sometimes later, but that's usually, and you get a straight answer, and that's pretty good. So you should leverage as much as you can. If you have questions unsure, besides asking your accountant, you can ask them also their questions, and that's what they're here for. And you can see here the different manner and how to contact them directly through the portal, or if you don't have access to the portal, you can email them. And I have provided here the link how to get the email address of your local tax office by providing your address, and they'll tell you which one are the closest tax office, and your email will be rerouted to them. Same thing with the last one. Usually in your tax return on top, you have the address of your local tax office you're affiliated to. But if you don't know which one you're affiliated to because it's your first year, then you go back here and you will get the full contact information, address, emails, and phone number. I'll stop right there, even though I had said let's talk about it at the end to try to respond to my question, to your questions. Well, 1019 dividend form, correct. So we'll talk about foreign income, including, foreign income, non-French income in a second. So I want to put that, yeah. You're getting conflicting advice, people around, and.
But what I suggest, Isaac, paraphrase the question so people also know what you're answering. Just in simple terms, if you can understand the question.
Yeah, so let me take a second to read it. Yeah, so one person, I think Jeff, is asking, what do we do? We've been living in France since 2017. We've been getting conflicting information. Well, first of all, welcome to France. That's the way it may work. You get sometimes conflicting information. It's not supposed to be like that, but that's part of the culture. And also, a lot of the time, preparers or CPAs in France are not very well, let's say, prepared to deal with international taxation system, and more importantly, with US people, because since the FATCA have been enacted, a lot of bankers, as you know, are running away from American clients, and sometimes accountants want to help, but they don't know all of the information. So just, be aware of this. Now, regarding your income, whether you're self-employed, or auto-entrepreneur or micro-entreprise, you are a resident of France because you live in France, your main place of abode is in France, your primary business is in France. Yes, you must report French tax return. Next question is, if I work remotely from France to a US company, okay? A lot of people like that, freelancers, right? Freelancers. Well, my business is in the US, it's an LLC. I'm being paid in dollars into my US bank account. Why would I need to report that to France? Right, I agree with you. But then France can say, hey, you live in my country, you don't pay any taxes. How the hell are you surviving? How the hell are you making a living? Well, if you're making a living off the US revenue, then this revenue should be considered a French tax revenue because you are a resident of France. And that's where people don't understand the difference. If you live in France, you have to declare all your income in France. If it is generated from France, your income should be taxed in France. Now, what I tell my customer is the first year when you are moving from the States to France, let's say it's a joker. You can wait until the next year to start over fresh. However, at that point, there are multiple options, and I'm not going to go into details to explore. It's either registering your equivalent of your LLC or your personal company in the US back in France. So you can report some of the income in France and some of the income in the US. But always claim, hey, Some of the income is actually indeed generated from the US during my travels in the US, but a good chunk of it is also generated being in France because you are a resident of France. Another possibility is a French salary you become an employee of your foreign entity in France, and that's actually work best because you have a French salary, you pay the wages, you pay the taxes, you have access to all the benefits in France, and then you're completely clean towards the French system. And any excess of that salary you have determined in France, you leave it in the US, and at the end of the year, you could distribute yourself dividends. Dividends in the US are taxed to the dividend rate, and then when you report that to France, it will just be a foreign dividend reported, and you're not subject to any tax, and at least you are completely resolving the problem. Jeff, if you want to discuss that further, I would definitely take a call on this, but it's important. The slides, I assume, can be shared after this webinar. I have no problem.
Yeah, usually we share the slides. Isaac will send them out. Usually he's the one who will send it out to all the people. And again, the video is for members only behind the firewall.
Yeah. So auto-entrepreneur, I did mention a little bit about your status between France and the US, but auto-entrepreneur taxes are very simple. It's quarterly paid, so meaning 4 quarters during the year, where you self-declare into a quartile called auto-entrepreneur, and then you basically declare everything based on your revenues only. You cannot deduct any of the expenses. And depending on what type of activity, for example, if you're doing prestation de service, for example, consulting job, then you will be taxed at a lump sum of 5.5%. And that will include all type of social and social and taxes to pay during the year. And then this is basically at the end of the year included as any normal income into your global individual tax return. And there's a knockout of 50% of this auto-entrepreneur status, which we can talk about it in your French tax return. Yes, there is an extra deduction, an extra abattement, we call that, for people over a certain age, which is automatically calculated by the system, because somebody was asking me if there are any special extra deductions for people over 70 years old. And a return that was incorrectly submitted in the past can and should be amended. The statute of limitation is 3 years. So if they have not responded to you or haven't followed you or haven't sent you the police within the last 3 years, we can consider that gone. However, if you are within the 3 years of statute of limitation, I highly recommend you to amend the return. And yes, this is something you will see in my next slides, but I have thought about it. N26 and Revolut's bank accounts must be declared. A lot of people forget about it, but you have those now online credit cards that is, I think, lodged in Luxembourg or sometime in Ireland. You must declare them in your 3916. We'll talk about that, which is foreign bank accounts. Next question from Owen. You have an apartment and receive rent. You have an abattement of 50%. And you have a monthly précompte, I guess you meant to say acompte installment of 160 euros on the rent of 1970. Will this be part of a refund? Yes. The way it works, we talked about the pass rate earlier. We said if you're an employee, your pass rate is communicated to your employer, and withhold your taxes every month from your paycheck. If you are obviously non-salary, for example, rental income, then the tax authority, the DGFiP, will withhold from your bank account monthly or quarterly what they believe based on your pass rate your installment taxes should be. So this amount can change, your 160 euros can change year after year, depending on your pass rate. One of my family members, I think 2 or 3 more questions. One of my family members moved to the US. And so he has no income. So if depending on his income and again residency status, he may or may not have to file a return. However, remember that you better off filing a null return than filing nothing. Even if you have a stage, which is an internship, and makes no income or your income is completely exempted from taxes, you still have to declare some items and will have a null return, but you're better off doing this compliant thing. One thing people also forget, because this is very rare to leave France back to wherever you want to be, there's an exit tax that you must fill out and potentially pay. What is an exit tax? Is if you decide to leave France permanently, nobody knows what's permanently, that is for the next upcoming year, you can decide to willingly send an exit tax form telling, hey, to the French government, I'm leaving France. I want to make sure I'm compliant with you guys. Tell me if I owe you anything or not. And if you don't owe anything, you're free to go. That's basically the exit tax. Next question from Anonymous. Reporting foreign bank account. We'll talk in a few seconds, please. 401k question that comes back very often. Please bear with me. It's in my next slide. June 30th extension apply to personal individual tax return that have a rental income or BIC or BNC. BIC or BNC are business income. If you don't need to use an accountant for that, even though I'll be very happy, Mary, to help you out, you can do it yourself if you are able to do it yourself. That's the question of Mary. I think we have one or more two questions, I think, or they're coming up as we go, as we talk. Okay, well, somebody's asking me a very technical question, Jennifer, between PFU and the barème, which is either a forfait, a lump sum, a lump tax that you have to pay, or the threshold we talked about. Jennifer, I'm not going to go into details of that now if you're okay, but the principle is you have two ways to calculate the tax. Most of the time is the barème applicable. PFU is the I was telling you about, the lump tax sum, and the system calculates which one is more beneficial and automatically gives you the best beneficial situation. There is no minimum threshold to report. So student income, if the person is independent and not dependent on anybody else tax return, should be filing a null return. And children don't have to report anything, only above 18, and if they are independent. I did not answer the question about the 160-month row account. Will this part or refund because of the abatement law? So let me rephrase, Owen. So the computation is you pay an account based on how much your pass rate is. And at the end of the year, we put everything together, all the piece of puzzles together. And at this point, we like in the US, we see how much should you have paid taxes based on your global income, rental, employee, or whatever business, whatever it is. We deduct how much you've already paid, hence, i.e. the 160 euros a month you talked about. And then that calculates you either a refund or zero to pay, or an amount to pay to catch up of the taxes you've already paid because it hasn't been enough. That's basically the way it works. I will just carry on because we have a couple more slides and I don't want to go above the time slot that Mr. Monte has provided to us. So not getting into more technical revenues and information to declare. All income must be declared in the 2042 tax return form, the equivalent of the 1040, okay? Such as wages. We talked about the freelance and the auto-entrepreneur 2042 Pro. We have also the 2042C. We have the rental property, which has 2044, and some other forms. Those are the major forms you need to know about. Now, all of those forms are usually generated together. It's like the Schedule E, the Schedule C, the Schedule A, blah, 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 that we have in our tax return in the US. Okay? One very important element that I have from my client is a lot of people own an SAU or rental property, even if it's empty, and they live abroad. And they don't do any bookkeeping or accounting because they believe that I don't have any revenues, or I have limited revenues, or I don't care. Well, let me tell you something. If you don't keep your records straight, meaning if you've done some home improvement work on your house, on your apartment, for example, you change the roof or the heating system or the floor or the tiles, you have incurred expenses, but you have no income against it. Well, if you don't accrue that somewhere, if you don't record that somewhere, when you will make income, when you will generate a revenue, you won't be able to take any historical deduction. Well, I tell my customer, keep your books up to speed, up to date, and then so you can carry forward any losses that you have incurred in the past. And then whenever you make money, you can offset that historical expenses, those historical expenses towards future income. And obviously, if you have that, you will generate no tax to be paid. And that's a good way to avoid taxes if you indeed incurred valid expenses. Another thing is property owned. A lot of people believe that, well, if I have a property, I don't have to declare it if it's not rented. Well, it's incorrect because any property must be declared because you might face what we call the IFI, the AMT in the US, for people that have a patrimoine, global assets of over 1.3 million. And this is calculated including your personal residence and any with an abattement, with a deduction, obviously for your personal residence, but with any other piece of property that you own. So it's global computation, and you must include that into computation in order to either be in the IFI section or not, but at least make sure you keep track of this. Worldwide revenues, Form 2047. Everybody knows about it. The principle is basically what we talked about declared and taxed earlier. You must declare everything you have. I have customers that have income from all over the world, and this must be declared. Now, it doesn't mean that you will pay taxes. It just means you need to declare. Okay, it's very important to declare because failure to declare, especially now, and we'll talk in the next item as well, where all the countries and fiscal administration talk to each other, they may cross information and find out that you lie to them or hiding things, and that might unfortunately trigger a tax audit nobody wants. So you're better off declaring disclosure. You get a deduction for it, so it has zero impact. However, there are certain incomes, and obviously I'm talking here about the double taxation system. Everybody knows there are tax treaties between governments, between countries, which are to be considered and taken into consideration, but that's our job, the accountants, to determine what is in the US, what is in France. For example, a piece of property owned in the US will be subject to the US tax and not French tax because it's located in the US and not in France, and vice versa. Does not mean, however, that you don't have to pay taxes in France. Well, it means that you have to declare it in France. And indeed, transition to the next point, certain source of income, for example, rental income from abroad must be declared in 2047, as we talked about, but will and might generate what we call social contribution, CSG and CRDS. Now, I'm not going to go into their details, but it has been a lot of, how do I say, a lot of issues and technical fights on this. And in a recent court decision, the IRS has accepted that the social contribution you're paying in France on the non-French revenue is a tax that is deductible in the US tax return. Okay, so a lot of people don't know about that. It has come out, it came out last year, and it's important to know that if you have a social contribution of you revenu foncier, which is rental property, this is to be paid in France, and that amount is it needs to be put back in your US tax return. That is also why most of my customers, I tell them, let's first do your French tax return and then do your US tax return. Then, or we do it together because there's a global view to have. That is also why we prepare in Monceau CPA, and we'll talk about it, US and French tax returns, because you have to have a global view when you are in this. Form 3916. So in the lighter version of the FATCA, France has requested that all non-French bank accounts must be reported, declared. Now, it's a lighter version of the US. Why? Because all you need to be putting in there is the account number, account holder, full name and address of the financial institution, and the date it was opened, October. Now, a lot of people tell me, well, I have my Roth IRA, I have my 401k, I have my mother's blah, blah, blah bank account in the Cayman Island and so on. What do I do? Well, I'll tell you, the French tax literature does not specify and does not talk about 401k because the equivalent of 401k does not exist in France. So a lot of Americans are confused what to do. And even if you want to declare, there's no account number on the 401k. Sometimes it's your social security, sometimes it's numbers that don't mean anything. and that's where people get confused. My view on this: the more the merrier. There's nothing to hide. You have possibility to put 20 pages in 3916, put everything. Don't forget, when I mean everything is the children's bank account as well. Checking, savings, credit card, everything you can put there, put it there, better be clean. Now, they don't ask you how much is there in the balance. So who cares? Okay, so all you need to be doing is declaring you have 20 bank accounts, and those are the bank accounts names, the numbers, and that's it. Failure, however, to provide those details might cost you between 1,500 and 3,750 euros for each bank account not disclosed. I don't know if they'll come after you for those things. There are probably bigger fish in the sea to run after. But why take the chance and the risk for free information to disclose that does not harm anyone and take the risk? Now, if you want to hide, you hide, but I'm just telling you that my view on this for 1K and all of those things can be and should be declared, and that's okay. It's not a big deal. I see a lot of questions on this. I'll come back to it once I finish my slide, a couple more slides, and we're done. Yes, so about us, what do we do and how can we help you? As you can see, we are international firm based in the US and France mainly. We have offices also in Canada that we are developing now with our French cousins, and we can help you. We are everything remote. We are on the phone. We have a US and French number, and I don't pretend, or we don't pretend to have all of the answers. However, we'll try to assist you in your specific tailored need and to respond to all of your potential questions.
So you do U.S. taxes in your firm?
Correct.
Okay. So yeah, I just want to, I think all of us know, all of us who are Americans know the headache involved in being dual citizens,
Yes.
dual reporting. And in Israel, I know very, very, very few, and we have hundreds of CPAs, many CPAs and enrolled agents. I don't know anybody, I'm thinking, other than big, big firms that have both American and Israeli. And it's, you know, kind of helpful. It is helpful to have it all in one roof, under one roof, because you get the best results, because there's no point in just addressing one country without having to address your America, without addressing France, and having it all under one house is valuable.
Well, that's exactly the point. First of all, I worked for 3 of the large 4 public accounting firms. So I went to the right school, if I may say. So I've seen the methodology, and I'm intending, or I'm doing a duplication of what the big firms do into my firm, and hopefully we are doing a good job. And second of all, as I mentioned earlier, it is very important to have a global view, because I often talk with CPAs in the US that are excellent, but not knowledgeable about the French tax system, with the complex tax system. This is a niche for us. This is a specialty and expertise for us. And we welcome any international customers, even Australian, UK, and other English speaking, because sometimes it's also the English being a barrier in France, people to come forward and hopefully help us. We can help them if needed. I think we have 12 minutes left. So I just want to finish that and address potential questions, because I know a lot of people are asking questions. The next steps. So that's important, because now you're coming out of this lecture. Isaac is nice, but he's scaring us now, because June 4th is today. I don't know what to do. I need to amend my return. I haven't disclosed my US or Cayman Island bank account. What do I do next? So here we give you a couple points. First, act now to be compliant. Don't submit late any return. Amend your return in the past as soon as possible. Leverage the COVID unfortunate circumstances to come forward and do a redemption, so everything can be clean moving forward. If you don't have a tax ID because you don't believe you need one, or you didn't believe you needed one before we talked about it, or you arrived in 2020, to request it as ASAP, create your profile online, and submit even a no return to ensure full compliance. It doesn't hurt. Nobody's going to come with to hit you after that if you have submitted a no return. Now, consultation. Our consultation is, the first one is for free. We can do it online. We can do it on the phone, no problem. You need to contact us if you have any questions. With pleasure, we'll help you out. Or more importantly, contact your local tax office. As I showed you earlier, you can contact them and they are there to basically be contacted for any questions. We'll see about the presentation. If you want to receive the presentation, you can either email us. You can see here my email address, or Monte will send me all of the emails and we'll do a massive send email to everybody. And with no further ado, I have 10 minutes left. I open the Q&A. Thank you very much for listening to my voice during 30 minutes or so. And now I will try to address all of your questions that you have submitted. Where do I get that? Those here. Okay. Okay, I have to click on all of them to basically remove them. How can we see the answer when it's indicated this question has been responded in direct? I do not think it was answered yet. I'm not sure I understand Mary Louise Daniels. What do you mean? If you can rephrase your question, that would be great. I am saying to file a null report, a zero return. If you are unsure and you arrive on December 31st, you have no income, it's better to send a null zero return than sending nothing. Stimulus check. Well, great question. First of all, it will only be applicable for next year's because it's been paid in 2020. So this is not a question related to 2019. However, based on my understanding, it is a non-taxable income in the US. So it will have to be reported into 24/7, but it won't be taxed in France as well. That's provided there is no additional tax literature that talks about it in the next few months. That is the understanding I can do now, but the question is not asked now or shouldn't be asked now. We can talk about it later, but that's my understanding of how we'll do if I were to do it now. People are asking me about exact line, where do I need to report my income here and there?
Isaac, I don't want to get into
exactly. I think at this point, exactly. If you want, you can basically send me an email and do a free consultation because otherwise it's too technical. Same thing for retirement plans or 401k. The idea is if it's taxed in the US, it won't be taxed in France. However, you must report it in France. If it's not taxed in France and you reside in France, if it's not taxed in the US, sorry, and you reside in France, it must be subject to taxation, at least thought about it. Now, if you are a French resident and you have rental property and all of the bank interest and dividend and all kinds of incomes being asked, then obviously you are a resident of France. There are certain elements here that I'm not going to go into details about. The computation will be different because you're taking advantage of the resident status. However, being a non-resident for those type of income is also, how do I say, it's pretty similar to the same tax level. But the differences, for example, are if you have additional expenses or if you have some tax credits, you can only take advantage of those if you're a resident versus if you're not resident. Ultimately, your tax will be French bank, non-French bank accounts. As I said, the strict minimum is obviously the main known bank accounts. Catherine, I'm responding to. Checking, savings, the typical accounts we use. However, there is a gray area where nobody, or at least I haven't been able to find in the text because I'm a text guy, where we talked about credit card accounts, 401k, and all of those great things. So my view, and this is my personal recommendation if I were you, I will disclose them into 3916 form, like I report any checking and savings account. Because in the US, credit cards are very typical. In France, they are not deployed and used the same way we have that we have in the US. So Mary Stephenson question. I'm not sure I understand your question, but I guess you have saving plans or federal bank accounts that you don't want to disclose everything into your 3916. Well, Mary Stephenson, I'll tell you, if you don't want to disclose your US Social Security number, you're disclosing your numéro fiscal in France into the authorities. So it's the exact same thing in France. So if you worry about the US Social Security number, you should be worried also about your numéro fiscal because it's exactly the same thing. In the US, a social security number, you can do way more things than a numéro fiscal in France, indeed. But don't forget, you're communicating those figures to the French government. So theoretically, they shouldn't be playing with those figures. But I would recommend the social security number is a 9-digit number. You can add 3 or 4 more zeros before. So maybe if somebody doesn't want, if somebody is not bienveillant, which is not nice, I don't think you can do anything with the 4 or 5 zeros, 9 digits. That's one truth. Is there any tax deduction for charitable donation? Yes, there are a lot of possibilities to deduct your donations in France. You basically get 67% or 66.67% deduction of any donations made to a French non-for-profit. However, very important, the French non-for-profit must be registered and they must issue you what we call a CERFA, which is a receipt. Without this, you will fail to respond to any electronic audit that are more often and often now. And basically, you will get fined to basically declare a donation for which you don't have a backup for. So don't declare anything you don't have a backup. I'm also including there that there's a lot of service à la personne deduction. What do I mean by service à la personne? There are a lot of potential expenses that you may be able to deduct from your tax return. One thing that 99% of you don't know, tax accounting fees, like my fees, are 50% tax deductible from your tax return. Why? Because I am accredited by the government from service à la personne. So whatever you're paying me, 50% of that will be refunded to you, even if you're not liable to any taxes. So that's a good news. And there are also other services, for example, a gardener, or if you have a professional IT guy, but all of those must be registered with the government, and sometimes gardener and IT people are not, whereas we accountants, or myself, I am registered with the government, so you can take the 50% deduction. PayPal, yes, PayPal accounts can be declared. And again, as I said, don't quote me on this. What I meant is my recommendation is to include everything to be fully transparent and sleep tight at night. However, you make you cross the line, not me. So what I mean by that, you determine what needs to be declared or not. I gave you the strict minimum checking, savings, and all of those things. Then the next level is all of the other gray area, bank accounts, savings online, and so on. Those, for me, according to me, don't hurt to declare. It's just a declaration basis, and that's okay. Do we report gross or net income on the 2042? 42 is obviously from your paycheck, you get the taxable amount you are subject to. So it's usually the net of that annual salary. And on 2047, depending on what type of income, you either have to declare the gross or the net income. For example, I like to tell my customers, I want to know for a foreign rental property, give me your income and your expenses, and we put it into the 2047. Sometimes they don't have information. So I tell them, provide me just the net deficit or income you're making from that property in the US. And we declare that. But the more the merrier. Now, usually those information are already known because they are there to prepare you US tax return. So that's how we get the information. Exchange rate, there are a website on impo.gov from euros to dollars. So if you go to impo.gov.fr, you can get it there, or you can use any official website like INSEE, for example, a statistical institution, national institute that provides those rates, and you can leverage that. Or you can also use Banque de France, official Banque de France, Banque of France, website to use your foreign reporting, your exchange rate. Usually accountants will do that, but you can use that, okay? Well, again, you forgot to report something in the past. If it's relevant, meaning an income that you should have been paying tax on it, yes, I would tell you amend it. If it has no relevance, for example, you forgot to declare a bank account, I would just go on and declare it this year. And if they come back to you and say, hey, you're declaring it now, but it says opening date 2001, why have you not declared this bank account earlier? Well, I didn't know. Good faith. Sorry, apologies. They won't, but at least you know.
Okay, last three questions.
Last three questions. Yes. Okay. We talked about the extension. I think I responded about this one. Does June 30th extension apply for rental income? I think I responded to that. New French law. I'm not sure what do you mean by please. Can you identify the new French law of U.S. property income? Not sure what do you mean by.
So why do you do when you send out the presentation, Lisa? If you want to get back to him,
yeah,
feel free.
They could come back, and I think I'm going to take the last question because otherwise we're going to go forever. If you have already filed a French tax return and have not listed all possible accounts, is there a refile mechanism? So as I just responded, if it's a bank account, a foreign bank account, I wouldn't go and amend just for that. I think what you need to be doing is ensuring that starting from now, you can submit correctly with all the information. However, if it's income related, I would highly suggest you amend the return. Two things for that. First of all, if you need to amend, you can only amend by paper. Okay, it's very important. And then basically, I think that's all I wanted to say. Yes, last thing I wanted to tell you, very important. If the deadline is on June 11th of this year, for example, that are those in Paris, and you have submitted your return already online, but you figure out that there's an error you have not done properly, you can refile until June 11th as many times as you want. You will be accepted automatically until June 11th. Once June 11th comes in, that's it. You cannot change it normally. You will have to amend it by paper. With this, I wanted to thank you very much. You have all my contact information. Monte, it has been nice sharing with you this knowledge to your crowd. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact me.
Yeah, okay, so let's finish it up. We're exactly 1 hour and less a few minutes. Thank you very much, Isaac. Again, with the time constraints, I wish to say that I think that he provided very, not only high level, but also drilling down to hint or even provide, you know, little solutions here and there that are usually not provided, and it's appreciated that he did go into that level of detail. Again, Isaac will send out these to all of you by email, the presentation. Thank you very much, and I suggest that all of you become Arrow members and allow us to do these kind of presentations and also fight for UNDC on all kinds of other stuff. That's it for now. Thank you, Isaac.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.